Introduced to regret deeply is to live afresh. Do you know what the cruelest thief is? It isn't time, it's regret. Time moves on, it doesn't look back, but regret forces you to live the same moment over and over, like a cruel loop you can't escape. You might be standing in the present, but your heart is shackled to the past. You smile in front of others, but late at night, when silence fills the room, you hear the same words echo. If only I had, if only I hadn't. We've all carried it. Maybe you regret the words you spoke in anger to someone you loved. Maybe you regret the silence you held when you should have spoken. Maybe it's a door you never opened, a chance you let slip by, or the way you abandoned yourself just to please others. Whatever the story, regret sits heavy, convincing you that the past still has power over who you are today. Here's the painful truth: the past never changes. It is finished, sealed, untouchable. Yet it still changes you every single day because you keep feeding it. You keep replaying the moment, believing that if you suffer enough, maybe the story will rewrite itself. But it never does. Regret doesn't just haunt your memory, it poisons your present. It robs you of freedom before you even realize you've handed it over. Think about how much life has already passed under the weight of regret. How many mornings have you opened your eyes but immediately drifted back into yesterday? How many conversations in the present were half-lived because your mind was arguing with ghosts? How many opportunities for love, for joy, for peace have been stolen, not by what happened, but by your refusal to release it? Buddhist teachings on letting go are not here to scold you for carrying regret. They are here to show you something radical. Regret isn't your enemy. It's not the punishment you deserve. Beneath the ache is a signal, a hidden lantern showing you what your heart truly values. That's why it hurts so much. Regret is not proof of your weakness. It's proof of your love, your longing, your care. And if you can learn to see it with new eyes, regret becomes a compass pointing you toward freedom. The Buddha taught that clinging to the past is like clutching a burning coal. You only burn yourself. But if you release the coal, you don't erase the fire. You transform it. The same heat that could scar you can warm your home, cook your food, light your path. In the same way, regret can either consume you or guide you, depending on how you hold it. And this is where our journey begins. In the next moments, we'll look deeply at regret through the lens of Buddhist wisdom. We'll explore why it binds us, what values lie hidden beneath it, and how we can shift from reliving the past to truly living in the present. Because freedom isn't about erasing yesterday. It's about reclaiming today. So stay with me, because the truth you may discover here is this: the weight of your past does not have to define the weight of your future. Part 1: Understanding the nature of regret. Regret, in the frame of Buddhist teachings on letting go, isn't a verdict on your character. It's a sign your heart still cares. What hurts is not the memory itself, but the way we keep gripping it, replaying scenes from the past as if repetition could rewrite them. Buddhism calls that grip clinging, fastening the mind to what was or what should have been and then wondering why the chest tightens. When we cling, we resist impermanence, the simple truth that everything changes shape moment to moment. Watch a sheet of morning frost fade as the sun rises. For a while it looks like the world will always be silver and still. And then, without drama, the glitter is gone and the grass is wet and green again. Regret aches because we want the frost to stay, or we want the cold to undo what already happened in yesterday's heat. But life moves. It always has. Think about holding a palm full of dry beach sand. If you squeeze hard, it streams out between your fingers. If you relax, the grains rest quietly in your hand. Memory behaves the same way. The tighter you clutch an old moment, words you wish you hadn't said, a door you wish you'd opened, the more it scrapes. Loosen just a little and something soft appears. Perspective, context, even gratitude for what the past taught you, however painfully. This is where freedom begins, not in erasing the past, but in changing your relationship to regret. The Buddha didn't ask us to forget. He invited us to see clearly. And when we see clearly, we notice an important detail. Regret is not trapped back there in time. It only breathes when we fuel it here now. You can prove this to yourself in the body. Remembering a mistake from 10 years ago, your shoulders inch upward as if the moment were happening again in real time. The stomach tightens. Heat rises. The body doesn't time travel. It responds to what the mind is feeding it. That is why mindfulness matters. When we bring attention to the breath, to the ground under our feet, to the sensation of air moving at the tip of the nose, the loop loosens. Like fog lifting off a lake as the first light touches it, the story grows thinner, and what remains is the simple fact that you are here, breathing, with options you didn't have when the past was still the present. Nature keeps modeling this lesson with unreasonable kindness. After a summer storm, the outline of yesterday's footprints disappears from the shoreline and the beach looks newly made. A maple lets go of its leaves every autumn, not as a failure but as a wise exchange. Bare branches now so that sap can rise in spring. A candle burns down, the flame becomes a thread of smoke, the room keeps a little warmth. The past also leaves traces that can warm us. Knowledge, humility, a sharper sense of what matters. Regret is what happens when we hold onto the smoke and forget the warmth. Buddhist teachings on letting go do not demand numbness. They point us toward a more honest love, love that is big enough to allow what already happened to be what it is, while also allowing today to be new. The past is a teacher when we bow to it. It becomes a jailer when we keep arguing with it. If you listen closely, regret often hides a vow. I want to show up fully. I want to speak kindly. I want to live with courage. In that way, regret is a compass. It hurts because it points to a direction you care about. The suffering comes from staring at the compass and refusing to walk. So the work is gentle and practical. Notice when the mind is sprinting backward. Name it, regret, regret, with the same tone you'd use for a friend who's crying, not a criminal you've cornered. Lift your gaze to the living world, wind combing through tall grass, the slow swing of a wind chime, the way late afternoon light pools on your kitchen floor and then slides away. These are not distractions. They are reminders that reality is unfolding right now, and you are allowed to meet it without dragging chains. Freedom isn't somewhere far away. It's the space that opens the moment you loosen your grip. If you want something concrete, try this small practice at the edge of your day. Sit where you won't be interrupted. Place one hand on your heart and name a single regret in plain language. Then ask, what value is hiding inside this? Love, honesty, presence, courage. Breathe in with that value as if you were inhaling a clear winter sky. Breathe out and picture a tide sweeping the shore clean. On the next breath, choose one tiny action that embodies that value now. A text you'll send, an apology you'll make, a kindness you'll offer. You are not editing the past, you're reclaiming the present. That is how regret loosens, how the past becomes a teacher, and how freedom quietly returns. Part 2, discovering the value hidden inside regret. Regret doesn't only sting because of what we lost, it stings because it points to something we truly value. Buddhist teachings on letting go remind us that regret is not just a chain holding us to the past. It is also a signal, a lantern in the dark, showing what our heart longs to honor. In this way, regret can become a teacher, whispering, "Here is where you care the most. Here is where freedom waits." Imagine a gardener who kneels in the dirt and realizes too late that he planted nothing last spring. The empty rows ache with absence. But if he listens closely, that emptiness is not mocking him. It's calling him to plant now, to give shape to the season still unfolding. Regret works like this. The pain you feel for missed chances isn't proof that your life is broken. It's proof that something inside you still longs to grow. Take, for example, a man who regrets never telling his father, "I love you." The father has passed, the moment gone. On the surface, this regret feels like a wound that cannot heal. But look deeper. What does the regret reveal? It reveals that the son values love, honesty, connection. That truth is still alive, still possible. He can speak it now to his own children, to his friends, even in a quiet prayer whispered to the memory of his father. The past event cannot change, but the value uncovered is timeless. Buddhism teaches that within every painful emotion lies a seed of wisdom. Mud gives rise to the lotus. Without the mud, the lotus cannot bloom. Regret is our mud, and if we avoid it or curse it, we miss the chance for growth. But if we turn toward it with compassion, we may notice the lotus beginning to open. That is how regret can transform into freedom. Think of fire. Unattended, it burns and destroys, but guided. Fire warms a home, cooks a meal, forges iron into tools. Regret is fire in the mind. Left to smolder, it scorches self-esteem and fills us with shame. Guided by awareness, it fuels courage, gentleness, and a vow to live differently. Here is where Buddhist teachings on letting go offer us something practical. Instead of replaying the story, what I did, what I didn't do, we ask, what value is hidden here? What does this regret show me about who I want to be? In that question, the knot begins to loosen. We stop staring at the closed door and notice the open path beneath our feet. A woman once told me she regretted being impatient with her mother in her final years. Every memory replayed like a blade. The sighs, the raised voice, the rushing past her mother's needs. But through practice, she began to see that the regret pointed to something radiant, her wish to be tender, to embody patience and care. She couldn't relive those days, but she could bring tea gently to her neighbor, listen without hurry to her children, and breathe deeply before answering in frustration. In this way, her regret became a vow, and her vow became freedom. The past cannot be rewritten, but the values regret reveals can be lived now. Write down one regret on paper. Beneath it, finish the sentence. This regret shows me I value. Keep going until you touch something true. Love, presence, honesty, courage, compassion. Then ask yourself, what small act today can embody this value? It doesn't have to be grand, it just has to be real. A plant that acts like a seed. The past gave you the soil, but freedom grows from what you choose to cultivate in this moment. Part 3, Living in the Present, the Path of Freedom. If regret ties us to the past, then mindfulness is the hand that gently loosens the knot. Buddhist teachings on letting go remind us that the past is like a shadow, visible, sometimes long and heavy, but without substance unless we keep turning toward it. Freedom is never back there in what happened. It is always here in the present moment. Think of standing at the edge of the ocean. Behind you, waves collapse into foam and vanish. Ahead of you, waves are forming far out at sea, not yet here. But beneath your feet is the sand, cool and steady, and around your ankles is the water arriving right now. That's the present. Regret keeps us staring back at the broken wave. Anxiety pushes us to scan the horizon for the next one. But life, the only life we can live, is the water touching us here and now. There's a quiet story about a monk who tended a garden outside his monastery. Every morning, he swept the path clear of fallen leaves. By evening, the wind would scatter more across the stones. A visitor once asked, "Why sweep if the path will only be covered again?" The monk smiled, because today's leaves are today's leaves. In that simple sentence is the essence of freedom, to meet what is in front of us without dragging yesterday into it or demanding that tomorrow obey our wishes. Living in the present does not erase regret, but it transforms it. Instead of carrying the past like a heavy book in your arms, you place it on a shelf. You can honor it, even learn from it, but your hands are free to hold what matters now. And when your hands are free, your heart can be free. Consider the sky at dusk. Clouds drift, painted in colors that shift each second. If you insist that the clouds remain pink forever, suffering follows. But if you sit quietly and watch, the sky itself feels vast, untouched by passing shades. The mind, too, is like the sky. Regrets are only clouds. They pass. The sky remains. To remember this is to taste freedom. Here's a gentle exercise. Choose one small action each day that expresses the value your regret has revealed. If you regret not listening enough in the past, today pause and really listen when someone speaks. If you regret harsh words, today let a kind phrase rise to your lips. Each act is like a pebble dropped into a pond. The ripples reach farther than you imagine. And with each act, regret shifts from a chain to a compass. It doesn't weigh you down, it points you forward. One friend of mine once told me he regretted not learning music when he was young. For decades, he carried that regret as if it were proof he'd missed his chance. One day, he bought a second-hand guitar and began plucking a few notes. He laughed at how clumsy he sounded, but his laughter was free. "I can't change that I didn't start earlier," he said, "but I can change the fact that I start today." That is the power of presence. It makes space for freedom where the past once claimed ownership. Freedom is not about undoing the past. It is about choosing the present. Each morning, take one mindful breath before you rise and whisper, "This moment is my life." During the day, when regret returns, touch something tangible, a cup of tea, a leaf, the ground beneath your feet, and remind yourself, the past is gone. A freedom is here. Part 4, the obstacles to letting go. If letting go of the past brings freedom, then why is it so difficult? Buddhist teachings remind us that the mind has its own weather, sometimes clear, sometimes stormy. The obstacles are not proof that you are weak. They are part of being human. And yet, when we learn to see them clearly, we discover that even the storm has a purpose. It waters the seeds of resilience within us. One of the greatest obstacles is rumination, the endless replay of old scenes. It's like a needle stuck on a record, circling the same scratch again and again. The Buddha described this as TR letter 1EA1OC letter 1EED, restlessness of the mind. Imagine a lake stirred by wind. The surface ripples, and the moon cannot reflect clearly. In the same way, when the mind is stirred by regret, we cannot see the present. Freedom begins not by forcing the ripples away, but by letting the wind settle. By breathing, by waiting, by returning gently to the now. Another obstacle is self-blame and shame. Many people look back at their past not only with regret but with harsh judgment. I was stupid, I was weak, I ruined everything. Buddhism teaches that this is a form of aversion turned inward. But just as no tree is blamed for losing its leaves in autumn, no human deserves lifelong punishment for a single season of mistakes. Shame is like a mold that grows in darkness. When we shine the light of compassion on it, it withers. Think of a child learning to walk. He stumbles, falls, bumps his head. No parent would say, "You are a failure forever." Instead, they lift him up, smile, and encourage him to try again. Why not offer yourself the same kindness? The Buddha urged us to cultivate metta, loving kindness not just for others, but for ourselves. Only then can regret soften into wisdom instead of hardening into chains. A third obstacle is doubt, the voice that whispers, "Can I really change? Or is it too late for me?" This doubt is like a fog rolling across the mountains. Stand in the fog and you see nothing. Climb patiently, and above the fog, the sky is always clear. The Buddhist path insists, transformation is always possible. Even the most gnarled tree still sends out new shoots in spring. No matter how long you've carried the past, freedom can begin in this breath. And then there is attachment to outcome. We tell ourselves, "I will let go once I fix the past, once I receive forgiveness, once everything is neat and resolved." But the past does not grant us such bargains. The Buddha warned against this craving for perfect closure. It's another form of clinging. True letting go does not depend on rewriting yesterday. It depends on choosing how you relate to today. Consider the image of a traveler. His bag is heavy, straps cutting into his shoulders. He keeps adjusting the bag, wishing it were lighter, but he never thinks to put it down. The obstacles are like this, habits of carrying that convince us the load is permanent. But the moment you loosen the straps and let the bag slide off, the body remembers what freedom feels like. Obstacles are not signs you have failed. They are the very ground where practice takes root. When you notice rumination, gently name it. Thinking. When shame arises, place a hand on your heart and say, "May I be kind to myself." When doubt clouds the mind, take a slow breath and recall. Everything changes, even this feeling will pass. And when attachment to outcomes tightens its grip, whisper, "I cannot change the past, but I can change my relationship to it." Conclusion, the door to freedom. Regret doesn't define you. The past doesn't own you. What defines you is the choice you make in this breath, this moment. Buddhist wisdom teaches that letting go of regret is not forgetting. It's transforming pain into power, memory into meaning. Your freedom begins not tomorrow, not next year, but right now. So I'll leave you with this. What story from your past are you ready to stop carrying? Write it down, share it if you wish, and then take one step forward with lighter hands and an open heart. If this message touched you, stay with us at Infinite Buddhist Teachings. Each reflection is another reminder that freedom is not far away. It is already here, waiting in you.